We have a new leaked audio recording of Donald Trump briefly admitting that he lost the 2020 election. Journalist Ramin Setoodeh, who interviewed Donald Trump multiple times and just recently said that Donald Trump is losing his mind, he could barely even remember Ramin Setoodeh, just released this recording. Watch MSNBC break it down.
Today, in a brand new tape, never heard before, we're hearing that private admission in the ex-president's own words, on tape. A remarkable slip of the mask, right? Trump's facade made during one of his half-dozen interviews with writer Ramin Setoodeh, author of a brand new book chronicling Trump's time as host of The Apprentice. We spoke with Ramin on this program yesterday. He told us about this moment. Here is that never-before-heard exchange that came up when Trump was talking about former Fox News commentator Geraldo Rivera. Listen.
What was Geraldo like?
He was good. He did a good job.
Yeah.
He was smart, cunning. He did a good job.
And are you guys still close, or are you no more?
No, I don't think so. He is. After I lost the election, I won the election, but when they said what it was, he called me up 3 or 4 times. I didn't take his call because I was so busy fighting it. You know, with what went on. And we've caught him. I don't know if you see it, but you will. But he called me up 3 or 4 times. And finally I had a little time. I called him back. And he went on Fox and he started talking about the president called me. I didn't call him. I returned his phone call. And he started talking very personally about how I was feeling, how I was doing. And I said, that's really a betrayal. I didn't talk about how I was feeling. It was a phone call that lasted very quickly. Just, hey, how you doing, Geraldo? How's it going? It's not my deal. He's not my psychiatrist. Right. But he made it sound like it was such a big deal. It was a nothing. All I did was return his call. But he said, the president called me, like I'm reaching out to him. Yeah. And I haven't spoken to him since.
So despite Trump's efforts to put his mask back on, right, to quickly cover it up, you heard the truth pour out of him. Call me after I lost. Geraldo, I mean, I won. But he lost. He lost. He knows it. And speaking conversationally, he admitted it on tape. But meanwhile, publicly, and even there in that call, the disgraced ex-president continues to perpetuate and spread the lie that has undermined trust and faith in our elections, in American democracy, the lie that his own supporters have bought into hook, line, and sinker, some of them the cost of their freedom, their liberty. The lie that fueled the supporters into committing a deadly coup against the United States government at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th.
Listen, Donald Trump absolutely knew there was no election fraud. People around him, his closest advisors, repeatedly told him. Mark Meadows told him. His Attorney General Bill Barr told him. His daughter told him. Even Mike Pence told him. Donald Trump also hired multiple investigative firms to find election fraud and then fired all of them when they came up with nothing. Not to mention when Donald Trump pressured the acting Attorney General, Jeff Rosen, he said, just say there was election fraud. If you say there was election fraud, we'll do the rest. All of the members of the DOJ sat him down in the Oval Office and threatened to resign en masse. They called it a suicide pact. Donald Trump knew for a fact there was no election fraud, but either his ego or his urge to have power took over. Donald Trump is a habitual liar. He even says on Truth Social all the time that if you want to save our democracy, then vote for him because President Biden is somehow a threat to our democracy, when he conveniently leaves out the fact that he spread a lie about massive, widespread election fraud. He sicked his supporters on the Capitol on the day they were certifying the results of the election. I'll break down that tape more in just 1 second, but first, I want to cover this interview that Donald Trump did just today where he makes some egregious claims. I mean, doesn't he always? But today, he made some especially egregious claims about Ukraine and NATO. Watch.
So for 20 years, I heard that NATO, if Ukraine goes into NATO, it's a real problem for Russia. I've heard that for a long time. And I think that's really why this war started. I'm not sure that this war would have started.
That is Donald Trump spreading Russian propaganda straight from the Kremlin. Those words come out of Vladimir Putin's mouth verbatim all of the time. Vladimir Putin tries to justify his invasion of a sovereign country by saying that NATO was getting too close to his border, but he conveniently leaves out the fact that NATO has been on his border in the form of the Baltic states for years. Not only that, but NATO cozying up to the West does not give Vladimir Putin the permission to just invade his next door neighbor like that and try to grab territory. Also, Vladimir Putin has on multiple occasions showed his true intentions by saying or writing about in books him wanting to restore the former Soviet empire. He wants Russia to be great again, as Donald Trump would say, and he thinks part of that is taking Ukraine back into his own territory, is annexing it. So this idea that the West provoked Vladimir Putin is totally false. That's the equivalent of telling a woman in an abusive relationship that it's her fault she's getting hit. It's borderline evil to place the onus on the victim of the situation, as Donald Trump is doing with Russia and Ukraine. But watch this clip of Donald Trump claiming that Joan Rivers voted for him, but mind you, she died in 2014. Watch.
Joan said she was a Republican. Did you know that?
I thought she might have been a Republican.
Yeah.
I know one thing, she voted for me, according to what she said.
Okay, well, there's just one minor problem with that. Joan Rivers died 2 years before the 2016 election, a little too early for early voting.
I make this point a lot, and I know it's a little bit cliche, but I genuinely think if President Biden did that exact same thing, if he said those same words verbatim and made that mistake, Donald Trump and the right-wing media would never let it go. They would say for years that it is concrete proof, it is a silver bullet evidence that President Biden has dementia, but Donald Trump is free to screw up names as many times as possible. He's free to lie about election fraud. I mean, the only way that Donald Trump actually believed the election was stolen is if he is psychotic. You would have to be so detached from reality to have all of your advisors, all of your closest allies telling you the election wasn't stolen and then opting to believe Mike Lindell and Rudy Giuliani instead. If President Biden completely forgot a journalist who he spoke to multiple times, the media would never forget it. If President Biden swished the names of Nancy Pelosi and Nikki Haley not just once but on multiple occasions, the media would never forget it. And mainstream media sources like the New York Times would be covering it relentlessly. But again, Donald Trump is free to make these mistakes because the media treats him with kid gloves while holding President Biden to impossible standards that he can never meet. I mean, they will splice up a little clip, and once that goes viral on TikTok, it'll get picked up by Fox News, it'll get picked up by the New York Post, then Sinclair Broadcasting injects that misinformation, that disinformation into households all across the country using local news. The infrastructure that Republicans have in place to spread disinformation would make people like Kim Jong-un jealous, people like Xi Jinping jealous. They are sort of winning this information war, even though Democrats are still doing a good job keeping up. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, comment, a blue heart, hit that subscribe button. Most importantly, have a great day.